Hey, welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. I have got Tom Schwab with me today. Tom is the founder, president, CEO of a company called Interview Valet, which is helping people and companies find their voice in a crowded marketing space. Tom is a marketing expert. He's worked with companies like HubSpot and some large DoD contractors. And here he is. Tom, introduce yourself.
Well, Craig, I am thrilled to be here. And like we said, we got some mutual friends. I started out in the Navy running nuclear power plants. And with that, I always have to laugh when they say CEO. To me, CEO is like of a huge, publicly traded company. To me, that's Chief Evangelist Officer. So I'm here evangelizing, for our company, for our clients, for podcasting in general, and really the new way to do business. I think we live in an amazing time, where I can live in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Yes, it really exists, and really do business around the world. I think there's a lot of problems in the world, but man, there is no better time to be alive and no better time to be growing a business.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it's a world now where marketing has changed. You've got digital, you've got podcasting. Everybody can self-publish a book. I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Everybody can tell their story. You can tell your story, and everybody's got something to tell. And in fact, a really good friend of mine is an interesting guy. He trains special forces in the military. SEAL Team 6. It's Navy SEALs, and he interviews a wide variety of people, and all he wants to know is, what's your story? And the story might be from the janitor he met on base who's been there for 30 years, or it might be the retiring Navy SEAL who's, been to Afghanistan 3 times. But what he's found is everybody's got a story to tell. I think companies are the same way.
And isn't that interesting that all that we ever wanted to learn or hear is stories? So from the caveman days, it was all stories. And then somehow we got to the point of death by PowerPoint. Nobody remembers that. Nobody remembers all of the graphs, but they remember the stories. And to me, it's amazing. The barrier to entry to tell your story, like you said, with a book, with a blog, with a podcast, is just amazing. And I like it because, yes, I did graduate from college, but IR engineer, right? So writing a blog for me, that's a homework assignment. Talking, that's fun. But now there's, the tools where we can transcribe what we talk about, clean it up, have somebody else that's an English major, turn that into a blog. And so with that, you can create in the way that you want, and then repurpose it in the way other people want. You can get your story out there so many different ways.
Well, it's interesting you talk about, so I'm an executive recruiter. Everybody knows that. And there's this thing called the interview. Everybody has to go on an interview. And some are pretty good. They're good business discussions. Let's just have a good business discussion. And then you get other companies that want to tell me about a time when you saved the company $10 million. Tell me about, it's the behavioral based interview. And realistically, I think if companies, they're all talking about hiring for culture, or they're talking about how do you find if somebody's real or if they're not. Nobody has really come up with a suggestion in an interview. What's your story? How did you grow up? Tell me about your parents. What did they teach you? Why did you go to the school you went to? Did you do well? No, why not? There's so much to be learned in somebody's story versus, a canned response to a stupid question.
Now, granted, it's been a while since I've been on an interview, but I would argue that today when I do interviews, when I talk with them, it's the final interview, not the first one, right? Because I've already looked up online to figure out what your story is. You are what you publish. So let's see where your mind is. Are you a thought leader? Are you publishing blogs? Have I heard you on a podcast? You may say you're great, but if I can't find any proof of that online, then I've just got to go with what you say. And so from that standpoint, people are telling their stories all over. And some people are telling a story that they don't want told, right? By the pictures they post, the social media things, that can hurt a brand also. Your marketing is not just confined to what we say about the company, but what do your employees say about it? What are all the interactions on it? The brand is what your customers say about it too. And so from that standpoint, I think HubSpot did a study where it said 70% of the buying decision is made before they even talk to somebody from the company. And I would say
Absolutely.
hiring too, 70% of your decision could be made from what you see online.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a conversation. I've got two kids that are freshmen in college. I mentor some kids at the local university and the business school at the local university. And that's a conversation you got to have with them. And you say, look, we're not from the same generation. I'm your parents' age, but I'm not your mom and dad. But if you're selling to me and I'm looking up your Instagram or your Facebook or whatever, and all I'm seeing is pictures of you holding up a beer and partying and showing off your new tattoo. Not that, hey, look, the new tattoo, nothing wrong with that. It's the new thing. But it's the brand that you're putting the brand that you're creating for yourself or for the professionals on LinkedIn. Is it a good picture? If I look at your profile, is it professional or is it, not,
And,
is it,
and,
it's first impressions mean everything.
and if you're comfortable with that, if that's what you want to be known for, no judgment. God love you. God bless you. Because I think today we live in a world of abundance, right? We've got abundant customers. We've got, abundant employers, right? It's not like the old day when I got out and it's like, wow, what companies are within 10 miles of the place that I want to live? No, a lot of times now work is what you do, not where you go. And I've even seen that with brands too, where a lot of people are like, I want to get more customers, more customers. Well, why don't you just focus on getting better customers, right?
Right.
People that really like what you do, like your brand. I joke around. I remember when I was 18 I wasn't 18. I was probably all of about 22, 23. And the chief told me, he's like, if his mom couldn't change him in 18 years, we're not going to change him now. He is who he was. I look at that the same way. This is my company. If you like it, if you like the values we stand for, if you like the principles we stand for, then great, come alongside of us. We'd love to work with you. But we're not the company that's going to be, doing the crazy marketing and starting everything with yo, yo, yo. Nothing against that, but that's not our market. So I think if people are consistent with that, and sometimes, the people that try to appeal to everybody appeal to nobody, be clear about
Absolutely.
who you are, because there's that great post out there, 1,000 True Fans. Now granted, they were talking about the music industry, right? That to keep a band going, you just need 1,000 true fans. I'd argue for most companies, it's 1,000 true fans of customers too. And so from that standpoint, find 1,000 people that love you and resonate with you. We've got veteran-owned business on our website. I'm proud of it. If that turns people off, that's fine. I have no judgments about them, but I just know that we're not going to change for them, and they're not going to be happy with us.
There's a power in saying perhaps we're not for you. Chick-fil-A, I think, is a great messaging company. They stand by their values. We're not going to open on Sunday. We've got Christian values that the company has stood by for 50 years. Society's changing. We realize that. And we may have people out there, we're not judging you. We're not doing anything, but we've got our values. And they've been under a tremendous amount of pressure to change, to bend, and they won't do it. And in fact, I think that the fact that they won't bend is probably better for their business than companies that, try to be, like you said, everything to everybody, not offend. I wrote I wrote a blog today about, you saw the NBA, the tweet from the NBA in China? And, my answer there is, a guy wrote, an NBA executive wrote a support Hong Kong tweet. The NBA is now basically banned in Hong Kong. Well, what do you do? Well, if I'm the NBA, I'm not backing down to China. China, the word that China put out was, yeah, we want to do business with the world, but don't, you know, don't even think to disagree with anything that we say. Well, okay, maybe China's not the place for us to be then.
Well, and it's the thing of, are we offended or do we want to be offensive? I think if there's judgment with it too, it's like, this is who we are. This is who we serve. This is what we do. If we're the best person for you, that's great. Let's come along. But if we're not, um, let's not try to make this work, because you're not going to change. We're not going to change. And to actually do them harm if you're not the best person, right? Because you're not the only person in the world that can do this, right? There's somebody that would fit them better. There's a substitute. And I think the only thing you really can't substitute for is who you are, right? And if you keep changing that, it's going to drive away the people. You mentioned Chick-fil-A there. Well, some people might be driven away from it, but it's also attracting their ideal customers. And I've always said, when I'm on a podcast interview, there's 3 types of people that hear me. The first one, listen to the interview and say, Tom is an idiot. Okay. I don't disagree with them, right? That's their opinion. That's fine. But I know that we'd never be good customers together. The second type are the ones that go, that was interesting, but I don't need that right now. God love you. That's fine. I hope it helped you in some way. The third group are the ones that go, wow, Interview Valet works with people like me. They understand me. They can help my problems. I want to work with them. Those are the ones we want to really address and reach out to.
Absolutely. And so before we started recording, you were talking with, so Interview Valet, you're helping companies podcast, your marketing is a completely different machine than it was 15 or 20 years ago. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, yes, there's a lot of noise out there, but it's a lot easier for companies who have defined markets. If you're, my market, business jet owners, well, there's 24,000 business jets in the United States. Okay, that means there's 24,000 people that need to be marketed to. How do you hit them? You can do it digitally. You can tell your story on a podcast. You can, I don't think the requirement to spend huge amounts of money on marketing to define products is necessarily the requirement anymore.
No. And in fact, it could backfire, right? Because if you want to compete with Coke and Boeing on their spend, I can never outspend them, right? And I think you say it's changed in the last 10 or 15 years, but I always worry that I think my grandfather would understand modern marketing more than my grandkids probably will, because he understood the strategy, right? What's marketing? Marketing, starting a conversation with somebody that could be an ideal customer. All right. He understood that. And for him, it was, a Rotary Club, a golf game. For us, it's podcasts, LinkedIn posts, things like that. But I think where people get problems is when they start looking at the tactics of saying, I've got to do a Facebook ad, or I've got to do this. And they don't understand how it fits in the strategy. It's like, well, why do you have to do that? Who are you trying to talk to? Why do you want to talk to them? Why do they want to listen? And I remember when my daughter was in junior high, she's in college now. She came to me and said, Dad, you need to be on Instagram. And I'm like, well, why? And she said, because everybody is on Instagram. I said, define everybody. She said, me and all my friends. And I'm like, that would be really, really creepy at that point if I went on Instagram, because none of my friends or customers were there. So really coming back to that strategy of, hey, where do I want to go? How do I want to start the conversation?
Yep. I mean, I'm a small business, and I've had, PR experts come to me and say, you need PR. Okay. How much is PR going to cost me? $3,000 a month on a retainer, 36 grand a year. Okay. What should I expect? What kind of ROI should I expect out of that? Well, it's PR. We can't measure ROI. Time out, dude. No. Yeah, for $36,000, you got to show me something. And that's it. So you talk about, well, Instagram is cheap. Do I want to be on Instagram? Do I need to go to the masses? Well, no, because is my market really on Instagram? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook advertising. I think Facebook is an awesome B2C platform. When I get on Facebook, I get all these shoes and clothing ads, Under Armour, whomever. You click on it, they've got my number. Yeah, I think it's great, but business to business, I'm not so sure. The
I
strategies the strategies are getting very interesting right now.
And I think there's a great book out there called Clicksand, How Digital Marketing is Ruining Your Business. Bill Troy from Columbus, Ohio wrote it. And I think one of the big things that he points out there is that whales don't go through funnels and big fish don't click, right? So all of a sudden we take the B2C experience that you talked about on Facebook, and it's like, yeah, I see something that's neat in a quick little video. Maybe I'll buy it for $9. It's a transaction. And we're like, well, if that works, that should work on B2B then too,
right.
With a relationship. And it's like, no, one's a transaction and one's a relationship. I am not going to hire my accountant or my lawyer or any trusted professional off of a cute little funny Facebook. I am not hiring a cardiac surgeon based off of how good of his Facebook page is. I want to have that relationship with them, the trust in them. And that's why I see that the people that are trying to get a relationship and putting themselves out there so you get to know, like, and trust them, they're having more success. HubSpot did a study a few years ago, and one of the things they found was when somebody went to become a customer, it was highly indicative if they'd become a customer if they went to the About the Founders page, right? Now, you're not going to be working with Dharmesh and Brian, right? But people still wanted to know, what's the soul of this company? Why did they start? And so for that, they needed to know that. Earbuds, I put them in the wash about every once a week.
Right.
So to me, it's a transactional thing, right? I don't care who makes them. I don't care what the story is behind them. I know I'm going to throw them in the wash and have to get another pair. So for me, that's a transaction. But actually, to work with somebody long term, I need to know more about them.
Yeah, it's interesting. We got a car dealer down the road, Bob King, Mercedes and GMC. And Arnie, Arnie, if you're going to watch this, Arnie's the guy. And we just, every time we need a car every couple of years, because I've got a business, I need to trade out cars. We just call Arnie, and Arnie knows what we want. And my wife just drives up. Arnie's got the car right there, does the paperwork, hands her the keys. Done. I think we've brought 6 cars in 12 years from him between my wife and I and my daughter. But that's the relationship.
It's a relationship, not a transaction.
It's a relationship, not a transaction. And but on the flip side too, it's like the executives I'm working with, they're looking, how do I break out? It's a crowd. How does an executive break out in his company? Good work trumps all, I think, in a lot of ways. But hey, look, if you don't do good work, it's a very short conversation. But if you do good work and you're in a big company and you're still trying to break out, how do you do that? Well, a lot of the ways, other thought leadership again.
And if you, the minimum requirement is good work, right? If you don't do good work, nothing else will make up for it. But I would argue after that you've got to do good work and let people know that you're doing good work, being published, right? The true mark of a professional, I remember as a junior officer in the Navy, it was like if you had an article that was written or published in Proceedings, right,
Mhm.
which was a peer-reviewed professional publication, right? That really made you somebody, and that stood out. Were you the best junior officer? Were you the smartest one? No, but you put your ideas out there. Are there smarter people in an audience listening to the keynote? Are they smarter than the keynote? I don't know. Maybe they are, but they're not the ones that are up there on stage that are actually sharing it with it and teaching it. And
Mhm.
so I think it's not only doing the good work, but then sharing that good work out there. And once again, it's never been easier with, LinkedIn articles, Facebook videos, podcasts. For me, I've been on 1,200 podcast interviews. And, anybody that says doing a podcast is easy has either never done it or never done it well. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I get every time I click on click on this thing, it's I get butterflies. It's please God, don't let me screw this up,
Oh,
type of deal. Going back to the right stuff. But it's not. And it's I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk was saying, hey, look, I got a lot of critics, which is great, but I'm the one on the field.
right.
I'm the one in the game. And, I think that that's a little bit of my advice to people I talk to, either executives and companies. Don't be afraid to make a stand. Somebody may say, hey, you're an idiot, but at least you made a stand. And 10 other people may say, hey, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Be a little bold.
Yeah, because the person that tries to appeal to everybody appeals to no one,
Right.
right? And maybe it comes with gray hair. It's like there's 3 billion people on the world, you know. I don't care if they all like me, right? If my customers value me and respect me, I love that. If my team values me and respects me, that's great. If my family loves me, what's that? Maybe I've gotten up to 1,000 people. If 1,000 out of 3 billion, I'm doing well.
That's all you need. And business is the same. It's like, hey, look, I don't need a million customers. I need 20. The restaurant down the road, I need 5,000 people to come to me 3 times a year, something like that. I can't remember his number was. And it's like, that's all I need. I'm like, great.
Mike
Mark.
Maples, who's a big VC investor in Silicon Valley, he was with Uber and Twitter. I remember hearing a speech that he did, and he talked about it's a world of abundance now, right? Abundant choices, abundant calories, abundant opportunities out there. And this idea that bigger is better. No, bigger is just bigger, right? So there's uh, some sites out there, right? I don't know, monster.com probably has, 7 billion resumes. I know there's not 7 billion people, but they probably got that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help me? Right. No, having an extra billion resumes doesn't help me. It just sort of confuses me. Having access to whatever it is, match.com, if it's got 1 billion people, that doesn't help me. It just confuses me. I want somebody that can, a friend that says, hey, here are 5 people that would be great for this position. Or, back in the college days, hey, here's a great girl that you need to meet. I don't need to meet all billion of them. Get me better, not just more.
Yeah. And there's that brings up another good point: focus and specialization. Executives who are focused and specialized tend to do better and make more money than people who are generalists, doctors, lawyers, in the professional ranks. But I'm sort of one to say even CFOs or manufacturing people or marketing people who can say, look, I am really good at aviation, finance, financial operations for aviation and aerospace companies only.
Mhm.
I know the market. Medical devices. I am really good at manufacturing med devices because I know the standards that, meet the regs. Once again, you don't have to know everything. You just have to be really good at a couple of things, and
Yeah,
you'll
and
make your way in life.
I totally agree with you on that, because that person that says, I'm the best lawyer, it's either them or the other million lawyers in the United States that are lying. One of them is lying, right? But if he comes in and says, I am the best commercial real estate lawyer in Manhattan, south of the park.
Right.
Oh, okay. Now I know exactly what it is. I'm not going to call him for, trademark law, but I know what he does. And it's the same thing with us. And there's always that pull of, can you do this? Yeah, I could do it. But, like a lot of times we'll work with clients. We get them on podcast interviews. They love it. They see it helping their business and they come back to us and say, this is great. Could you help me launch a podcast? And I always say, well, that's like asking your dentist if she can do your knee surgery, right? She's hardworking. She's smart. She could probably figure it out. But I don't want my dentist doing my knee surgery.
Right.
They are much better to serve you by saying, hey, let me give you an introduction to an orthopedic surgeon. And so that's the same thing with us. Is like when people come to us and say, can you do this? I probably could, but that's not our zone of genius. Podcast interview marketing, that's all we do. Let me introduce you to somebody else that can do that.
Right.
And it's tough because a lot of times people come in and say, hey, will you do this for me? But that dentist is smart enough to realize that neither one of us are going to like this if I do your knee surgery.
Yeah, yesterday I turned down 2 searches, just not for me. I'm just like, yeah, you want to say yes. You hate to turn away people, but it's, I'm not the right person. Waste of their time, not a good use of my time. It's better that we, talk about where we would be a good fit, and hey, I'm happy to refer you to somebody else. I hope, best of luck. Come back to me when you've got something that looks like X. I think that's a better conversation to have. And there's a little bit of wisdom that comes with that. But again, it's focus and not trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah, we focus on 3 verticals. So it's not necessarily where our clients are, but where our clients are. So business is by far our biggest one, and then faith and Christianity and health, nutrition, and wellness. And there was a comic, literally a professional comic, that came up to me, and we were talking about, he use podcast interviews to grow his business? And I'm like, sure, spelled it all out. This is exactly how you do it. And he's like, oh, that's great. I want to work with you. And I'm like, sorry, we don't work in that vertical. And he's like, no, but I want to. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it up for one person, right? Here's a copy of the book. You figure it out yourself. And he said, what would it take you to do that? And I said, if you can find 24 more other comedians that wanted to get that vertical, we'll get into that. And I've heard from a couple of times, I'm still telling people about it. And other people have told me, no, you don't want to deal with 24 professional comedians.
No, not at all. Hey, before we came on, you were talking about, a defense company who was trying to use a podcast and trying to get their story out about, what they're doing to market their business to, Gen, whatever we're in now, Z, it's, how did they get their message out? Were they successful? What did they do?
Yeah, they were very successful with it. And what they were running into the problem with was that everybody thought, oh, defense contractor. Yeah, I know, my grandpa used to work for them. And I'm a smart engineer. I'm a smart computer scientist. I don't want to work for them. I want to work for one of the fun companies, the Googles, the Apples, right? And so they were able to go out there and talk about some of the neat projects they were doing, some of the fun projects they were doing. And they had people that were more like the target audience they were going after. So they weren't, they didn't have the CEO talking to people that just got out of college, right? Because it's not peers. They were talking to either peers or people slightly above that. And it was interesting, the conversations they got onto, and really that how they tried to rebrand the company. It worked well for them. And we've worked with some software service companies too, the same way, that are trying to break out of, hey, we just offer this product, and to tell the stories behind it, because that's what people are going to remember with it. And,
it's interesting. I got to go to a banking conference a leasing conference next week. I don't even own a suit. I mean, I'm not even embarrassed to say it. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. I've got my own business. I live a mile from the beach. The suits that I had were, I bought when I was younger days. I'm like, I'm just throwing them away. I got a jacket, I got slacks, I got shoes, and And I think, the defense industry, it's a lot, it's a little bit rebranding. I mean, you got to get, if you want the next generation, you got to you got to check your suits. You got to get rid of them. They may defy your culture, but hey, look, get rid of the suits.
And audio is an amazing way for that too. There was a discussion recently about what is the future? Is the future video or is it audio? And there was a futurist out of Stanford, and I loved his argument for it, is that the future is vivid audio, not video. And his point is that video gets so dated, right? We watch a movie back from the 80s or 90s and we laugh because, oh, look at, they're using a corded phone, or
right.
Look at her hairstyle. It looks so dated. But yet audio, we can listen back to, War of the Worlds, and it's just as powerful. Yep. The Hindenburg, the humanity, that's still powerful, even though it's probably 100 years later. And this gentleman, his point is that vivid audio can get through a lot of things, right? So if you're trying to connect with a different generation, if they see my video, they may go, oh, that guy's as old as my dad. He's got as much gray hair. Or they may say, oh, he doesn't look like me, or doesn't come from the same area. Or we might not listen to somebody because what do they know? They're young enough to be my kid. But if we're just listening to the audio, we focus on what they're saying. And from that standpoint, the vivid audio can really connect better at times than the video.
Zig Ziglar on audio never gets old.
But you know what? It breaks my heart because my niece was studying for real estate, and she had all these books that she was supposed to listen to or read and listen to. And she told me she found this guy, Zig Ziglar, and she was listening to all this stuff. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Zig had died, 5 or 6 years ago. To her, he was the smartest guy out there.
Yeah. For 80 years, he's been the smartest guy out there. So hey, let's wrap it up. What do companies, look, you're helping companies market, you're helping them get their message out. It's a crowded, what do people, not just companies, but more importantly, people, what do people need to do to get their message out there so that they can break out as individuals?
Yeah. And I think goes back to what we were saying. Everybody's biggest problem is obscurity. There's companies we could help. There's people we could help. The problem is they don't know we exist. It's never been easier. So if you're a writer, write blogs, write a book. If you're a speaker, if it's easier to talk, well, get a podcast, do a podcast. But whatever it is, it's never been easier to get your ideas out there and to share them. The other thing I think of too is that, I can remember back in the time on the carrier, you could always spot somebody that was brand new. Because for that first 2 or 3 days, they would climb up to Vulture's Row and watch the planes take off and land. And after a few days, it's like, this is ordinary.
Right.
And what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. And we all, after a certain amount of time, just say, it's just ordinary. Everybody knows this. No, they don't. What could help people. And it's never been easier to share that. And when you help them, you help yourself, because you're going to be seen as the thought leader, as the expert. Go out there, share what you know. It's never been easier, and you'll be blessed for it also.
No, that's a great way to wrap up. Thanks for coming on, Tom Schwab with the Interview Valet. Let's see, www.interviewvalet.com. How else do people get a hold of you, Tom?
I was going to say, Craig, I'll put a page just on there. So it's Interview Valet with a V, .com/aerospace. And so I'll put a free copy of the book if anybody wants a copy of Podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy. I'll put my social media on there so you don't have to figure out which Tom Schwab in Kalamazoo it is. And I'll put my email there. So if anybody wants to connect with me, just go to interviewvalet.com/aerospace.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Craig.